we must, as men, be proactively doing the work, looking at ourselves, making ourselves better. And again, on a physical level, on a mental level, and on an emotional level, and even a spiritual level. I do believe we must have, it's my belief that we must have a spiritual component to our life. We must believe in something greater than what we see in our everyday 3D environment. We must know that there's some sort of universal energy, higher power, God, divinity, whatever you want to call it, that is acting on our behalf. All right. Welcome to the next episode of the Ignite the King podcast. I am your host, Dr. Michael Diamond. Welcome, brothers. We are ready to dive deep. Put this episode in context. We start our King Immersion tomorrow. So I have been running around, getting ready, reading over forms, planning, organizing, coordinating for 16 men to descend onto Austin for 3.5 days of doing the deep work. So every time we come around one of these immersions, I like to do an episode about the Ignite immersions. This is pretty much our flagship event. This is the entry point for men to get involved in Ignite the King right now. So men will come in from all over the country and descend onto Austin for 3.5 days for a total immersive experience. And I get asked often, what happens at these immersions? What goes on? It seems shrouded in secrecy. And I want to dispel some of those things and dive deeper on some of the work that's done at these immersions. And, the thing is that out of context, some of the things we do and some of the places we go might seem a bit odd or weird or crazy. My belief is that for things to be effective, they need to be a bit odd and crazy and weird. I'm okay with that at this point in my life. We are not going for normal. Most men that I meet have to break out of normal and go to their edges and find the places that have been untouched and unearth them and get and juice the wisdom that's there. So I would say there are 3 things at the immersions that you can count on. One is that you're going to be tested and stretched physically, from your sleep schedules, eat schedules, physical output, holding space. That's definitely going to be something, and I'll hit on that a little bit more. Mentally, you're going to really have to come forward in speaking about what's going on. A lot of seminar. I've been to tons of transformational events over the years, and sometimes it's easy to grab your coffee and sit in the back and listen and watch what goes on. And the Ignite immersions, that's not really on the menu. You're going to have to engage. And then lastly, emotionally, this work opens you up. Doing that deep inner work, the shadow work, we're getting into the emotional body. We're getting into the emotional system. Emotion, said this many times on the podcast, is energy in motion. Emotion is meant to radically shift your physiology for change. I'll say that again. The point of emotion is to radically shift your physiology, readying your body for change. And in order to get the wisdom or the knowing of what you need to see or be with, you must pass through the emotion to get there. There's no bypassing the emotion. And, frankly, this scares a lot of men. And this probably is a place of resistance where men are like, yeah, that's not really for me. I don't want to sit around in a circle with a bunch of men crying. And it's like, well, then just live the life that you're living. And if you want something greater, then you're going to have to dig deeper and you're going to have to go to those places. And it's not necessarily with the outcome that every man needs to cry. This is not just, again, sitting around in a circle with men crying. But when men finally hit on a place within themselves or a circumstance that they've been holding on to, and they start to pry and get underneath it and feel what's been there, then yeah, typically emotion will start to come up. And it could be tears of gratitude. It could be tears of sadness. It could be tears of rage, tears of joy. We as men, as a collective, must start to learn how to access our emotional body, our emotional state. Most men are living in this very energy neutral life. And the reason men will come into an immersion container is to get out of their normal life, is to get out of the regular, get out of the Groundhog's Day, get out of the repeating day-to-day life that they're in. Because when everything is vibrating just within a certain little range, and you don't ever experience highs or lows beyond that, then change is impossible. And what I've seen happen over and over again is that life will give you something to knock you out of that middle range. Life will introduce a circumstance that essentially forces you to have to face something in your life. A moniker we say in Ignite all the time is like, do you want to get tickled by a feather, hit by a brick, or hit by a truck? And most men wait until they get hit with a brick or a truck, or the wife is walking out the door saying, I want a divorce, and taking the kids. And the man's like, well, what happened? And it's like, well, you didn't get any of the signs or signals, or weren't available or present for any of the conversations that led up to that. So the purpose in a lot of ways of this podcast is to give you men out there an opportunity to realize, hey, there might be some work here for me to do. There might be some things I need to address in my life, not waiting for it to get to the point where the wife is walking out the door, or all the money's out of the bank account, or what insert ... whatever challenging circumstance you've experienced in your life. We must, as men, be proactively doing the work, looking at ourselves, making ourselves better. And again, on a physical level, on a mental level, and on an emotional level, and even a spiritual level. I do believe we must have, it's my belief that we must have a spiritual component to our life. We must believe in something greater than what we see in our everyday 3D environment. We must know that there's some sort of universal energy, higher power, God, divinity, whatever you want to call it, that is acting on our behalf. Things aren't happening to us, they're happening for us. So when we can start to deconstruct that and say, like, well, this is happening in my life, it must be trying to show me something, it must be trying to teach me something. What is it trying to teach me? And then when you get in an immersive container with other men and you see that we're all sharing similar challenges, we're all sharing similar stories, and all men, navigate that differently, we get to get the wisdom of that challenge without necessarily having to face it. How amazing is it to get the wisdom of a circumstance without having to face the circumstance? And vice versa, how beautiful is it for you to share wisdom on something you've gone through or are currently going through, that's going to provide wisdom for another man to learn, to grow, to not have to face that experience dead on. This is where we start to get in the realms of unbound energy, or in some circles it's called a tier 2 consciousness, where we're all sharing, exchanging energy and information to learn and grow together, and that the sum is greater than the parts. And this is truly one of the most magical things I would say that happens on these Ignite Immersion weekends. There's why I think we're there, there's what gets revealed, and then there's really why we're there. And I tell that to the men as well. All these men fill out forms to come to the immersion, asking them various questions about what's going on in their life, what they think is going on, what they think they need their breakthrough to be, what are the challenges that they're addressing. And oftentimes, the thing that they said that they needed change on, it's like what gets revealed in that immersion experience is often very different. Where maybe that first thing was the gateway in, it was the access point in, it was the thing that got them there. And ultimately that thing does change. But yet what often gets realized is like, whoa, there's actually something else really going on here. And as I start to navigate that, typically through the emotions, then what's been buried underneath that now has some room to percolate up to the surface, come from our hindbrain, or that subconscious mind, into our conscious mind, and then we can see it. And when we see it, we can see it with new eyes. We can see it with a new perspective. And then it's like, that's the game changer. really what ultimately everyone walks away with at these immersion is a paradigm shift. And that's the thing, because people don't walk in saying, I want a paradigm shift. They're saying, I have this problem and I want you to fix it. I want you to show me what to do differently, which is classic, right? I've practiced chiropractic for many, many years, and I had to meet people where they were at. They come in the door. I have this challenge. I have this sickness. I have this illness. I have this pain. Please remove it. Please take it away. And if I told them at the beginning, well, you're going to need to change your whole paradigm of healing, and that's a healing crisis, and it's exactly where your body needs to be, and we really need to focus on wellness and wholeness, not the symptom of the problem, my practice would not have lasted more than a month, because you have to meet people where they're at. People are walking in pain. They're walking in what we call the season of discover. They're uncovering the hard truths that they're having to face. But we need to meet them there and say, yeah, that's totally valid. And it is, because that's their current experience. They don't have enough energy available to think different thoughts, to tune into something that's even better or higher and greater. It's kind of like when you're really upset and someone's trying to cheer you up and get you to think about something that's joyful or happy, and you're like, fuck off, I don't want to hear any of that shit. But if someone's able to match and mirror you and see you and be with you and be present with what's going on without trying to fix it, that's enough to bring enough stimulus into the circumstance, into the situation, where you feel seen, you feel heard, and you feel like, wow, maybe that burden's been lifted. I mean, think about how you actually feel after a good cry. You feel, it feels cathartic, but you feel empty. You feel clear. And then the knowing and the wisdom and the downloads start to come in. So imagine taking that in a compressed, immersive, focused container for 3.5 days. Cycles of this start to happen. Certain men start to pop at certain moments. And then we get to witness that. We get to midwife or usher that man over that threshold into his work. And we all get to be a piece of that. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing to be a part of another person's healing process. And ultimately what happens with that is there's the paradigm shift. There's the big aha. There's the acknowledgement. And then, there's inspired action that happens. Because the pitfall I see a lot of men make is that they'll have an awareness of a problem and we immediately go to fix it mode. Well, what do I got to do? And oftentimes we do that immediately so we don't have to feel the pain or the emotion of the impact of the thing that we did. And what I'm suggesting here is that that's where the transformation happens. That's where the quote unquote alchemy happens, is when we burn through the feelings that thing has either caused or that have been repressed or held down because we've been afraid to feel it. And I believe, because I experienced this myself, I was afraid to feel those feelings because I was scared of them, frankly. I didn't know what they were. I couldn't control them. They felt out of control. And I did my best to push them down, to contain them, to suppress them, to not feel. And what I learned is that that's the exact opposite of how the healing process actually works. Sometimes it's got to be cathartic. Sometimes it's got to be messy. Sometimes, you got to be a puddle on the floor and be reborn again. I mean, this is the classic story of the butterfly. The butterfly, the caterpillar, has to come to almost death to then reemerge as the beautiful butterfly. It literally has to become a puddle of goo on the ground to then transform into the beautiful butterfly. And if we resist that part in the middle, then we're not going to change. We may dress it up. We may make incremental changes, or we may remove ourselves from that circumstance or situation to just repeat it in another relationship or another job or another circumstance. But to truly get the deeper healing, to truly get the, I'll call it instantaneous transformation, because in the moment it feels anything but instant. It feels like you're going to be there forever. But in actuality, it's moments. And that's an important point that we need to bring up around emotion. Emotion is only meant to last seconds to minutes at the most. When we start holding on to emotion for longer than a few minutes, it's no longer the emotion, it's now our story about the emotion. For example, if I asked you to be in a complete rage, in a fit of rage and anger for more than 2 minutes, you'd be completely exhausted. You would not be able to sustain that level of rage for that long. Now, I don't suggest that you go try this. Just take my word for it. Emotions are meant to be momentary. They're meant to radically shift your physiology. So it's readying your body for change. The blood flow changes, all the skeletal muscles engage. We're pumping the blood differently. And then we take action based on the movement of the emotion. So we're not meant to stay stuck in emotion for a long period of time. And I often will ask men if they are, what are you getting out of it? Because it doesn't feel good, so you must be getting something out of it. There must be some kind of reward. Maybe you're in a kind of relationship where you have these kind of agreements, these sort of shadow agreements that we're going to commiserate together. What's the old idiom? Misery loves company. People love to commiserate on how bad things are. And the opposite's true, right? People like to cut you down when things are going really great. More often than not, because things probably aren't going great in their life and they don't feel comfortable with that. So they want to bring you down to their level. They want to project onto you what it is that they're feeling. They don't want to be lifted up. And it also comes down to our nervous system and our wiring, specifically in our mind and our brain. Our brain is not designed to make us happy. It's designed to keep us alive. When you look on a wall of pictures and you see a picture that's tilted, your brain focuses on the one that's tilted because that's the one that's not right. The brain is designed to sniff out what is unsafe so we can survive. And it's a great wiring. It's a great part of our nervous system. But if we're relying on that part of our nervous system to actually produce joy and happiness and gratitude, then you're barking up the wrong tree. It's just not going to happen. Now, we need to work through and process those emotions so that we can experience the clarity that comes afterwards. Most people, most men that I work with, they want to figure things out. I mean, I've actually banned that statement. Like, I just need to figure out how. And it's like, the how is none of your business. And you're not going to figure out anything from the energy state that you're in. You need to be real and acknowledge and move through the energy that's actually going on. And then the wisdom will come. The knowing will come. The clarity will come. And most men want to skip over that part. And the beautiful thing about an immersion container is that second A, that acknowledgement piece, is a huge part of what we're experiencing in that group environment over those 3.5 days. Having to be with the raw and the real. By the way, when men are accessing this part of themselves, 10 times out of 10, other men trust them more as a result. It's when men put up the mask and hide and find that perfect thing to say to protect themselves and put up a barrier between them and others. Men can sniff it out in a second. It's like a salesman. You just know and you don't trust it. But when someone's raw and real and vulnerable and honest and open and transparent and lays it all out there and they're not hiding anything, you're like, I can trust this man. I can trust that what I see is what I'm going to get. So the question I would ask you, a lot of men out there, is like, how many of you are putting up that mask in your life? How many of you are portraying a certain persona of yourselves so that others will experience you in a certain way? And is that really working? Are people trusting you more? Are your sales showing that? Is there intimacy in your relationship? Are your kids open with you? What's the metric? How are you measuring that in your life? When was the last time, if ever, have you allowed yourself to truly just like open up and be vulnerable and be transparent and be alive and allow yourself to be moved and allow yourself to go to places that formerly you just wouldn't even entertain going to? And we use the word immersion because you have to immerse yourself. This isn't like, I'm going to dip my toe in the water and see how cold it is. It's like, you're jumping in cannonball style into the deep end and saying, I'm fully immersed. I'm in it. And you can literally see, and I've shared this on previous podcast episodes, the changes in the faces of the men literally start to morph and change. Bony structures, stress lines, wrinkles, the whites of the eyes, the bigness of the eyes. These things start to radically shift and change because when we're in that persona mode, we're wearing the stress. We're literally wearing the stress on our face, whether you think you are or not. And then as that energy starts to move, as it starts to transform, and our nervous system isn't in a negative feedback loop of stress or fight or flight and all that subconscious piling up that happens, and we start to empty and move and reorganize, literally the face starts to change. Literally you start to see men's disposition, smile, eyes, bony structures start to morph and change. And I've witnessed this. We've done over 20, 25, I don't even know, 25 immersions now. And I see it every time. It's absolutely incredible. So the point of that is, imagine how much stress you're holding in your face, in your body, in your physiology, and what's the impact of that on your life? What's the impact of that on your health? And at what point do you get the signal like, maybe it's time for a change? Maybe my wife or my girlfriend saying, hey, there's some work there to do. We need to work on our relationship, that you finally say, okay. So this is a clarion call, this particular episode, to you men out there, to hear it from another voice, from a man who's been through it, a man that's taken other men through it, to say, we all have work to do. You all have work to do, absolutely, unequivocally. Some of you men may have been on this path for a while and continue to do that work. Good, keep going. Some of you may have just stumbled across this podcast, maybe new to men's work or personal growth. And I will tell you, it is the most important thing you can do is to work on yourself. Not try to fix others or change others. You need to work on yourself, because you're the one having the experience of others anyway. You're the one that is perceiving what's going on in your life. And what lens are you looking at it through? If you're looking at it through a lens of stress and overwhelm, well, guess what? No matter what the thing is, it's going to feel like stress or overwhelm. I had an experience this morning where I was holding a lot of tension. You can imagine preparing for all these men to arrive and all the logistics and back end things involved. Like, I was in a low energy state. And my wife was like, why don't you just empty with me and share with me? And within 15 seconds, I'm streaming tears down my face. And I don't even remember what I said, but it was just, what was I holding inside, and the pressure that was building up. And when I just was given the space, and she holds amazing presence, this is one of the things we do at our immersion too, is to be able to hold that kind of presence, is to empty, is to allow it to come through. It didn't need to make sense. It was just all this built up data that has been circulating in my system that needed to move. And on the other end of that, I feel open, I feel clear, I feel connected, I feel ready. Some of it is I was just feeling all the men coming and the pressure on myself. My wife also ran a retreat last weekend. So, a lot of running around, a lot of organizing, coordinating. And on top of that, the deeply powerful transformational work that we're holding the space for, we need to do our work too, to move that energy. So this is just a small microcosm of the work that we do on these immersion weekends. It's absolutely critical. Again, on a physical level, we need to get to that emotional state. So we got to move the body physically. And there's a lot of men out there that you're sitting behind a desk, you're sitting on a couch, you're driving in a car, you're not moving your body. There's a lot of men that are just sedentary these days. And there's just no movement. There's no life force. There's no energy. So we need to make sure that that's getting moved, whether in a working out fashion, whether it's through yoga, whether it's through running, whether it's through combatives. We need to move the body physically to access the emotional system. Once we access the emotional system, then the mind gets clearer. And as the mind gets clearer, then the spiritual aspects come in and are able to drop in, where what you're really there for starts to show up. Again, as I said earlier in the episode, there's why you think you're coming. There's what gets revealed as you start to do the work. And then there's why you're really there. And that's my metric for each man that comes. It's like, there's a reason he's there. There's what gets revealed. And then there's really why he's there. And then when he gets to that third part of why he's really there, and you circle back to the thing of why he thought he was coming, it's 9 times out of 10 irrelevant, because it's not about that thing. It may have been enough to get him there. And that's great, because sometimes you got to feel a little pain. You got to feel a little of that fire in order to make a change in your life. I would just say, don't let that brick become a truck, because trucks kill. Bricks hurt, trucks kill. And you don't want to have to try to revive something that's dead. Get the whispers. And I'll just say it as a blanket statement. All of us need to be doing the work, to be showing up as kings in our life. And a king is one that has knowing, that is wise, that is sovereign, that is giving blessing, that sees the bigger picture, that is embodied in himself, that is leading his family, that is leading his relationship, that is leading his children in business. All of those things. That's what a king does. So this King Immersion is about men peeling away the layers of all the stuff that really isn't them, that have been built up as walls to protect themselves from the challenges of life, and to find who they truly are, and to remember their vision for their life, or to have a vision. Some men are just going day to day trying to survive, and in survival, it's hard to have vision. There's chaos in the kingdom. So these weekends are about reclaiming our sovereignty, reclaiming our power, reclaiming our strength, our courage, our wisdom, our insight, our power, our passion, our fire again, getting lit up by life, going home with a sense of purpose, with a sense of direction, with a vision, with a sense of being on mission and fulfilling that assignment that the universe, God, divine, whatever you call it, has for you, or just leading your own life and being the one in the driver's seat, and not being bounced around by anyone else or others' opinions of who you should be or what you should do. Whose metric are you following anyway? When have you actually taken the time to sit down and say, this is what my life is about? This is who I am. And claim that in a powerful way. Being witnessed, and that's a key part. You know, we could do a lot of this work on our own, but there's something that amplifies it that becomes inexplicable when there's other men in witness of it. Yes, there's a level of accountability that comes in when you're claiming things in front of other men. Now you have to own that and live up to that. But to be witnessed, to be seen, to be acknowledged in your power is something that the modern man is just crying for, needs and must have, because a man that's inspired and acknowledged will run through a brick wall for that purpose every single time. And if you don't have that, if you don't have that fire, if you feel like things have just like been ho-hum, then it's time to break the trance. It's time to break through that. And it's time to make change. And that's what these Ignite Immersions are all about. I feel super empowered about leading these men. It's an edge for me every single time to get up in front of a group of men. You know, I have the stories in myself, like, who the fuck am I? Who am I to teach these men anything? You know, what do I know? The imposter syndrome that comes in. And you know what? The question I've started saying is, why not me? If not me, then who? And that's the message I want to carry on to the other men, because each one of you out there has this potential. I'm a man like you. I'm a man on the weekend that is showing up to do my work and let the work that I've done previous be the example that other men need in their life. That's what this is all about. That's what these immersions are all about. And I'll definitely be doing a follow-up episode after the immersion to bring that elixir, to bring the gifts that were had this weekend. And I'm just stating on this episode prior to the immersion that the changes and transformations and breakthroughs that are going to occur this weekend, I know I know, are going to be off the charts. And there'll be some beautiful stories to tell. Because when we get together in this way, that's what happens. That's what happens every single time. It's exactly the right medicine and exactly the right dosage that we need. So, one, I ask you to hold the space for us at Ignite for this weekend. You'll probably be hearing this episode after the weekend, but hey, things are retrocausal anyway. So when you hear this, tune into the men that are there doing their work, because the work that one man does, he does for all men, not just for himself or his family, but for every man that's ever experienced that in his life. And that ripple goes out and has an impact. And the more men that are doing that, the bigger that ripple goes out. And it's truly an honor to help serve and guide and amplify that energy in these containers. So if you're interested in attending an immersion at some point, we have our website, ignitetheking.com. Check out for our most current offerings. Our next immersion will be the Lover Immersion in mid-August here in Austin. So you can reach out and apply for that. As always, share this episode with someone that may hear it. Like, share, subscribe to the channel. And I look forward to seeing you guys on the other side. Have a beautiful rest of the day. Aho.